A wheelchair-bound millionaire offered 1 million naira to a street girl if she could heal him. Everyone laughed at the cruel bet. What she said next froze their laughter forever. Alhaji Abubakar Sani clapped his hands loudly, pointing at the barefoot, dirty girl trembling before him. 1 million naira, he roared, with a smile that could freeze hell. All yours if you make me walk again. What do you say, little beggar girl? The 4 businessmen surrounding Alhaji Abubakar erupted in laughter so violent, some had to wipe away tears. The scene was too perfect. A 10-year-old girl, in clothes so ragged the holes revealed skin scarred by poverty, gazing at the richest man in the state as if before a cruel god. "This is pure gold," roared Chief Emeka Nwek, a construction magnate, banging the side table so hard he nearly toppled his expensive drink. "Abubakar, you are a genius of cruelty. Do you think she even understands what you're offering?" asked Dr. Kunle Adebayo, owner of a chain of private hospitals, leaning forward, sadistic amusement glinting in his eyes. "She probably thinks 1 million is the same as 100 naira, or maybe she wants to eat the money," added engineer Tunde Alabi, an energy sector mogul, sparking another wave of brutal laughter that echoed through the private courtyard of the Hope Springs Rehabilitation Center, Abuja. Nozi Okoro clutched her mop, her hands trembling so violently the wooden handle rhythmically knocked against the stone floor. Each thud was like a drum, marking her humiliation. She was a general services employee at the center and had made the unforgivable mistake of bringing her daughter to work because she couldn't afford a childminder. "Alhaji Sani," Ngozi murmured, her voice so low it was barely audible above the guffaws. "Please, we are leaving now. Adana won't touch anything. I promise you silence." Abubakar roared, his voice cutting through the air like a whip. Ngozi visibly flinched, as if the words had physically struck her. "Did I ask for your permission to speak? For 3 years you've cleaned my bathrooms without me ever addressing a word to you, and now you want to interrupt my meeting?" The silence that followed was so dense, it seemed solid. Ngozi lowered her head, tears beginning to well in her eyes, and took a step back until she was almost pressed against the wall. Adana watched her mother with a heartbreaking expression, a mix of pain, helplessness, and something deeper no 1-0-year-old girl should have to feel. Alhaji Abubakar Sani, 5 years trapped in a wheelchair after an accident that had shattered his spine, had built a fortune of 300 million naira, ruthless in business and cruel to those he considered beneath him. His private suite at the center was an obscene monument to his ego. Enormous windows with a privileged view, imported furniture costing more than entire houses, and cutting-edge medical technology he paid for without batting an eyelid. But what Abubakar enjoyed most wasn't his money. It was the power it gave him to do exactly this. To remind poor people of their place in the world. "Come closer, child," Abubakar ordered with an imperial wave of his hand. Adana looked towards her mother, who nodded almost imperceptibly despite the tears now streaming freely down her cheeks. The girl walked forward with small steps, her bare feet leaving faint marks on the polished marble that cost more per square meter than everything her family owned. "Can you read?" Abubakar asked, bending down to the girl's eye level. "Yes, sir," Adana replied in a low but firm voice. "And can you count to 100? "Yes, sir." "Perfect." Abubakar straightened up with a smile that made several of his partners snicker in anticipation. "So, you understand what 1 million naira means, don't you?" Adana nodded slowly. "Tell me in your own words," Abubakar insisted, crossing his arms. "What is 1 million naira to you?" The girl swallowed, her eyes briefly flicking towards her mother before she answered. It's more money than we will see in our entire lives." "Exactly." Abubakar clapped as if the girl had given the correct answer on an exam. "It's more money than you, your mother, your children, and your children's children will ever see. It's the kind of money that separates people like me from people like you." "Abubakar, you're being cruel even by your standards," commented barrister Oladele Fayemi, a real estate investor, though his smile indicated he was enjoying the spectacle. "It's not cruelty, Oladele, it's education," Abubakar replied, without taking his eyes off the girl. "I'm teaching her a valuable lesson about the real world. Some are born to serve, others to be served. Some clean, others make messes knowing someone else will clean it up." He turned towards Ngozi, who was desperately trying to make herself invisible against the wall. "Your mother, for example, do you know how much she earns cleaning toilets?" Adana shook her head. "Tell her, Ngozi," Abubakar ordered with calculated cruelty. "Tell your daughter what your dignity is worth in the labor market." Ngozi opened her mouth, but no sound came out. Tears now cascaded down her face, her body trembling with muffled sobs she tried to contain. "You don't want to tell her?" Abubakar pressed, savoring every second of psychological torture. "Fine, I'll tell her. Your mama earns in a full month what I spend on one dinner with my partners. Isn't it fascinating how the world works? This is better than television, doctor." Kunle laughed, pulling out his phone. "We should be recording this." "I already am." Engineer Tunde showed his device with a malicious grin. "This is going straight to our private group. The boys at the club are going to die laughing." Adana watched the entire scene with an expression that was gradually changing. The initial shame was being replaced by something different, something more dangerous, a cold, calculated rage that gleamed in her eyes like embers. But let's return to our game. Abubakar turned his attention back to the state-of-the-art wheelchair beside him. "Do you know how much this chair costs?" Adana shook her head. 2 million naira. Abubakar let the number float in the air. "Just this chair cost more than your mother will earn in 20 years of cleaning my bathrooms. It has space technology, sensors that respond to my thoughts. It's made of aeronautical carbon fiber. Then why are you offering money for something impossible?" Adana asked softly. The question took Abubakar by surprise. For a moment, his smile wavered. "What did you say? If it's impossible for you to walk, then there's no risk of you having to pay the million," the girl repeated with simple, yet devastating, logic. "So, it's not a real offer. It's just a joke to laugh at us." The silence that followed was different from the previous ones. The businessmen exchanged uncomfortable glances. The girl had just exposed the fundamental cruelty of Abubakar's game with brutal clarity. Well, look at that." Chief Emeka laughed, but it sounded forced. "The girl has a brain after all. A brain is useless without education." Abubakar regained his composure, though something in his voice had lost its force. "And education costs money that people like you don't have. My grandmother used to say the opposite," Adana replied, her voice still soft, but gaining a firmness that surprised everyone. "Your grandmother?" Dr. Kunle sneered. "And where is your grandmother now? Too busy to care for her own granddaughter. She died 6 months ago," Adana said without apparent emotion. But Ngozi let out a choked sob that echoed through the courtyard like a silent cry of pain. The word fell upon the place like a bomb. Even the most cynical businessmen felt something uncomfortable stir in their stomachs. They had unknowingly crossed a line. "I'm sorry," Abubakar murmured, though the words sounded hollow, even to himself. "You're not sorry." Adana looked him directly in the eyes with an intensity that made Abubakar involuntarily recoil. "If you were sorry, you wouldn't be doing this." "Child, be careful how you speak to me," Abubakar warned, feeling control of the situation slipping from his hands. "Or what?" Adana asked with a terrifying calm for someone so young. "Are you going to fire my mama? Are you going to take away the job that barely allows us to eat? Are you going to make us poorer than we already are?" Each question was like a slap. Abubakar realized he had completely underestimated this child. He had assumed poverty equated to stupidity. "My grandmother was a traditional healer," Adana continued, walking slowly towards the wheelchair. "She treated people with pain, illnesses, paralysis. She taught about herbs, massages, energy points in the body that doctors ignore." The 4 businessmen now watched in absolute silence, fascinated despite themselves. "And what did your grandmother teach you about rich people?" Abubakar asked, though a part of him no longer wanted to hear the answer. Adana placed her small hand on the armrest of the wheelchair, her fingers tracing the expensive material with strange familiarity. "She taught me that rich people buy the most expensive things, not because they need them, but because they want to show that they can. It's about ego, not necessity." "That's absurd," Barrister Oladele protested, but his voice lacked conviction. "Is it?" The girl turned to him. "Then tell me. Alhaji Sani spends 150,000 naira a day at this center, but does he truly believe he will be cured? Or is he here because giving up would mean admitting defeat?" Abubakar felt every word like a punch directly to his soul, because the girl was right. His suite at the center held no real hope of cure. It held only his refusal to accept reality. "My grandmother used to say that the body has its own wisdom," Adana continued, her voice gaining an authority impossible for her age. "That sometimes doctors cure the illness, but forget to cure the person. And that true healing begins when the person decides to believe they deserve to be healed." "Enough," Abubakar said, but his voice came out weak. "I didn't come here to listen to cheap philosophy from a child. You didn't come here to humiliate my mama and me," Adana retorted with a brutal honesty that cut like a knife. "You came to remind us that we are poor and you are rich. You came to feel superior. But what you didn't expect was that I know something you don't know." "And what do you know that I don't?" Abubakar asked with contempt, though he sounded less confident than before. The girl smiled for the first time, but it wasn't a smile of joy. It was a smile that held ancient knowledge behind it, wisdom that came from suffering. I know how to make you walk again. The 6 words fell upon the courtyard like a death sentence. All the businessmen stood completely immobile, processing the impossible they had just heard. You're lying, Abubakar, Chief Emeka said, but there was a tremor in his voice that betrayed his uncertainty. Do you want me to prove it? Adana asked with the same unwavering calm. That's impossible, Dr. Kunle exploded. She's nothing but a dirty child who probably never even set foot in a school. How could she know something that 15 specialist doctors don't? A dirty child, Adana repeated, and for the first time, there was real emotion in her voice. That's what I am to you, just a dirty, poor child. She turned to her mother, who watched her with a mix of terror and pride that made her face glow despite the tears. Mama, Adana said softly, can I tell them? Ngozi nodded, unable to speak, but communicating everything with her eyes. The girl took a deep breath, as if preparing for something difficult. My name is Adana Okoro. My grandmother was Mama Amara Nwakana, a traditional healer known in 3 states for treating cases that conventional medicine had given up on. She studied with natural healing masters for 60 years, treated over 1,000 people, and taught me everything since I was 5 years old. The revelation struck like lightning. Chief Emeka grabbed his phone, immediately searching for the name. His eyes widened when he found the information. My God, he murmured. Mama Amara Nwakana. There are articles about her. They called her the Woman of Miracles, said she cured paralysis, chronic pain, illnesses doctors couldn't. Nonsense. Charlatanry. Abubakar cut in, but his voice was less certain. Tricks to deceive desperate people. My grandmother never charged anyone a kobo, Adana said, her voice cracking for the first time. People came to her after doctors said there was no more hope, and she helped. Not for money, but for love. She turned to the audience, her eyes red, but her posture incredibly dignified. After she died, we were left with nothing. My mama, who had been a teacher, had to accept work as a cleaner, because I had nightmares for months, and she couldn't leave me alone. She cleans toilets for men who treat her as if she's invisible. Engineer Tunde murmured, all previous mockery evaporating from his voice. For men who never asked her name, who never wanted to know her story. And now you know, Adana nodded. You know that my mama was a biology teacher at a public school, that her students loved her, that she sacrificed everything to care for me when I lost my grandmother. Each revelation was like a layer of humanity being restored to Ngozi, layer by layer, until the businessman could no longer see her as just the cleaning employee, but as a complete person with a history, pain, and sacrifice. My grandmother taught me everything about healing because she wanted me to continue her work. Adana turned her attention back to Abubakar. We spent hours studying anatomy, testing herb mixtures, learning about energy points. It was our time together. She placed both hands on Abubakar's immobile legs, her fingers moving with strange familiarity, and before she died, she made me promise that I would use the gift to help whoever truly needed it. Then do it. Abubakar challenged, though his voice had lost all its former arrogance. If you truly know, heal me. Adana shook her head slowly. I cannot heal one who does not want to be healed, and you do not want to be healed. You want to keep being a victim because that justifies your cruelty. The silence that followed was deafening, but Adana continued, if you truly want to try, if you truly want to believe that healing is possible, I can help. Not for money, but for the memory of my grandmother who taught me that everyone deserves a second chance. Abubakar looked at the girl for a long moment. He looked at her small hands resting on his lifeless legs. He looked at Ngozi crying against the wall. He looked at his businessman friends, who suddenly seemed ashamed, and then he did something that surprised everyone, including himself. Please, Abubakar whispered, and the word came out like a broken prayer. Please, help me. The clock struck 5:40 a.m. when Adana woke her mother with a gentle touch on the shoulder. Ngozi had spent the entire night awake, sitting on the single thin mattress they shared in the tiny staff room, watching her daughter sleep and praying for a miracle to happen, because that's what they needed now. A miracle. Mama, Adana whispered, already dressed in the only clean clothes she possessed. It's time. Ngozi held her daughter's face with both hands, tears already streaming before she even spoke. We can still quit. We can leave here, find work in another city, start over away from Alhaji Sani and all this madness, and let him think we were fraudsters. Adana shook her head with a determination that shouldn't exist in someone so young. Let him continue to be cruel because no one ever truly challenged him. No, Mama, grandmother wouldn't have given up, and neither will I. 20 minutes later, mother and daughter walked through the still empty corridors of the Hope Springs Rehabilitation Center. The place was different at this hour, silent, almost ghostly, with only the emergency lights casting long shadows on the marble walls. When they reached Abubakar's private suite on the 3rd floor, they found something completely unexpected. The 4 businessmen from the previous afternoon were there, all of them. Chief Emeka Nweka drank strong coffee while checking his phone. Dr. Kunle Adebayo conversed in a low voice with engineer Tunde Alabi. Barrister Oladele Fayemi sat in an expensive armchair, watching the door with an expression that mixed curiosity and something dangerously close to sadistic expectation. And in the center of the room, Alhaji Abubakar Sani was in his wheelchair, dressed only in a t-shirt and athletic shorts, his thin, pale legs exposed in a way that left him strangely vulnerable. "You arrived early," Abubakar commented when Adana entered, but his voice was different from the arrogance of the previous day. There was nervousness in it, thinly disguised fear. "I promised I wouldn't be late," Adana replied simply. "I also promised something." Chief Emeka stood up, walking until he stood between the girl and Abubakar. "I promised myself I'd be here to see when this charade explodes. Because that's what's going to happen, isn't it, child?" "Emeka, you don't need to be here," Abubakar said, but it sounded more like a plea than an order. "I don't need to, but I want to." Chief Emeka smiled cruelly. "Do you really think I'm going to miss the show when this child admits she was lying? When this whole story about a healing grandmother is revealed as the desperate fantasy it obviously is?" "She wasn't lying," Dr. Kunle intervened, surprising everyone. He held up his tablet, showing the screen to the group. "I spent all night researching. Mama Amara Nwakana was real. She had a serious reputation in alternative medicine communities. There are testimonies from hundreds of people she treated. Testimonies are not science," Engineer Tunde replicated. "They are stories, and stories can be invented." "They can," Dr. Kunle conceded. "But I also found 3 cases documented by skeptical doctors who went to investigate the allegations. In all 3, the doctors admitted improvements they couldn't explain through conventional medicine." The silence that followed was tense. The possibility that Adana might actually know something was beginning to seem less absurd than everyone wanted to admit. Still, Barrister Oladele said slowly, "There's a difference between an experienced 8-7-year-old healer and a 10-year-old child. Even if Mama Amara Nwakana was legitimate, that doesn't mean she managed to teach something so complex to a child. My grandmother started learning at 5 years old," Adana responded, walking calmly towards Abubakar. "She said the younger you start, the more your hands learn to feel what your eyes cannot see." Ngozi remained near the door, her hands clenched so tight her knuckles were white. "Doctor." Chike Obi had entered silently behind them, accompanied by 2 nurses carrying medical equipment. "I will monitor everything," Dr. Chike announced coldly. "Blood pressure, heart rate, any signs of physical distress. And if at any point I determine this is causing harm to the patient, I will intervene immediately." "I am not your patient," Abubakar corrected with irritation. "You work for me, not the other way around. And yet I have ethical responsibility, Doctor," Chike retorted, unintimidated. "Abubakar, for the last time, this is madness. You're betting your health and 5 million naira on a child who has absolutely no." "Enough," Abubakar roared, his voice echoing through the room. 15 doctors spent 5 years telling me what isn't possible. Maybe it's time to listen to someone who still believes in what is possible." He looked directly at Adana, and for the first time since the accident, there was something beyond rage in his eyes. There was raw, desperate hope that pained to see. "What do you need me to do?" Abubakar asked softly. Adana approached, her small hands hovering over Abubakar's legs, not touching them yet. "First, I need you to tell me exactly what happened, what the accident was like, what the doctors said, everything." Abubakar took a deep breath, and when he began to speak, it was as if he was bleeding the words. "It was a helicopter crash. I was returning from an inspection at one of my factories. The pilot lost control. We fell from approximately 50 meters. I should have died. Most people who fall from that height die." His voice was completely devoid of emotion now, as if he were reading a medical report instead of describing the moment that destroyed his life. "The impact fractured my spinal column in 3 places. The primary injury was to the 5th lumbar vertebra. The doctors said I was lucky because the injury wasn't complete. I still have some sensation, just no motor control." "Do you feel pain?" Adana asked, her fingers now lightly touching the skin over the surgical scar on Abubakar's back. Sometimes, phantom pain they call it, as if my brain is still trying to communicate with muscles that no longer respond. It's not phantom pain, Adana murmured, more to herself than to anyone else. It's the body screaming that the connection is still there, just blocked. Her fingers began to move in precise patterns along Abubakar's spine, pressing specific points with a confidence that left Dr. Chaik open-mouthed. She knows spinal anatomy, the doctor whispered to one of the nurses. She's touching exactly the correct neurological pressure points. Impossible, the nurse responded. That takes years of study for silence. Abubakar hissed through clenched teeth. I'm feeling something. The entire room froze. What? Doctor. Kunle stepped forward involuntarily. What are you feeling? Heat. Abubakar whispered, his voice laden with astonishment and terror. There's heat spreading from my spine downwards. It's not imagination, it's real. Adana did not respond, completely focused on her work. Her hands moved methodically, pressing, massaging, manipulating tissue and muscle with surgical precision, and as she worked, she began to speak in a low voice. My grandmother used to say that the body never completely gives up, that even when doctors say something is dead, there are still microscopic paths trying to reconnect, cells trying to communicate, energy trying to flow. This is pseudoscience, doctor. Cheek began to protest, but his voice died when he saw the expression on Abubakar's face. The richest man in the state was crying. Silent tears streamed down his face as he looked at his own legs with a mix of disbelief and devastating hope. I'm feeling tingling, Abubakar whispered, in my toes. I haven't felt anything in my legs for 5 years, and now I'm feeling tingling. It could just be superficial nerve stimulation, Dr. Cheek said quickly, though his voice betrayed uncertainty. It doesn't mean recovery of motor function, but it's something, Chief Emeka said quietly. All previous mockery evaporated. For 5 years, zero sensation. And now, after 10 minutes with this child, he's feeling something. Adana continued working for another 20 minutes in absolute silence. The only interruption was when she occasionally asked Abubakar to describe what he was feeling, and each description was more detailed than the last. Heat transformed into tingling, tingling transformed into subtle pulses. Pulsos transformed into something Abubakar swore was involuntary muscle contraction. She's getting exhausted. Ngozi finally spoke, seeing sweat beginning to form on her daughter's forehead. Adana, you need to rest. Just a little more, the girl murmured, but her voice was visibly tired. No, Abubakar said firmly. Your mother is right. You've done enough for today. Adana slowly retreated, her small hands visibly trembling from exhaustion. Ngozi rushed to support her before she fell, holding her daughter against her chest. What? What did you do to me? Abubakar asked, still looking at his legs as if they were alien objects he couldn't recognize. I unlocked pathways. Adana responded weakly. The injury to your spine created blockages, like a dam in a river. The water still wants to flow but cannot. I just helped open some passages. That doesn't make medical sense, doctor. Chaik protested, but he sounded less convinced. It doesn't make sense to you, Adana corrected gently, because you were trained to see the body as a machine. But the body is more than that. It is energy. It is flow. It is connections that science has not yet fully mapped. Barrister Oladele was furiously typing on his phone. I'm looking for research on neuroplasticity, on alternative neural pathways, on recovery of function in spinal cord injuries. And you know what? There are legitimate studies suggesting that what she's describing may have real scientific basis. May have basis? Or does have basis? Engineer Tunde asked with skepticism. Science doesn't know, Barrister Oladele admitted. There are so many things about the brain and nervous system that are still a mystery. Maybe this child is doing something that Western medicine simply doesn't understand yet. Abubakar tried to move his toes. For 5 years he had attempted that same movement thousands of times without the slightest success. And now they moved, he whispered in a voice so low that almost no one heard. My God, they moved. The explosion that followed was chaotic. Doctor, Chaik ran to examine. The nurses began checking equipment. The businessmen shouted simultaneous questions, and Abubakar simply continued looking at his feet, with tears streaming freely. It was an involuntary spasm, Dr. Cheek declared after a quick examination. It doesn't mean voluntary motor control. It was voluntary, Abubakar insisted. I made that happen. I thought about moving, and they moved. Abubakar, you're emotionally invested, Dr. Chaik argued. You can't trust your own perceptions right now. Then trust my eyes, Dr. Kunle intervened. I was looking directly at his feet. I saw movement, small, but unequivocal. I saw it too. Chief Emeka reluctantly agreed. I don't know what this child did, but something definitely changed. Adana was now sitting on the floor, her head resting on her mother's shoulder, visibly exhausted. He needs to do exercises, she murmured, struggling to keep her eyes open. Every morning and night I will teach specific sequences, and he needs to continue with daily sessions. How long? Abubakar asked, his voice urgent. How long until I walk? I don't know, Adana admitted with brutal honesty. My grandmother used to say that everybody responds differently. Some days, some weeks, some never. It depends on how much you believe, how much you work, how much the universe is willing to cooperate. That's not an answer, Engineer Tunde scoffed. It's vague mysticism. It's the only honest answer. Ngozi spoke for the first time, her voice strong despite the tears. My mother never promised miraculous cures. She promised to try, and she taught my daughter to do the same. Abubakar looked at Adana, at the 10-year-old girl who was so exhausted she could barely hold her head up, and felt something strange stir in his chest. It wasn't just hope, it was something deeper. It was gratitude. Rest, he said softly. Come back at 4 p.m. for the second session. And Ngozi, Adana's mother, looked at him with evident terror, expecting an impossible demand or a veiled threat. You no longer need to clean bathrooms, Abubakar continued. Starting today, your only responsibility is to take care of Adana, ensure she eats well, sleeps enough, has everything she needs. Your salary has tripled, and you will move into one of the guest rooms on the second floor. Ngozi covered her mouth with both hands, sobs escaping between her fingers. I don't know what to say. Don't say anything, Abubakar replied. Just accept. But as mother and daughter left the room, leaning on each other, Chief Emeka approached Abubakar with a serious expression. You realize what you're doing, don't you? He said quietly. You're setting yourself up for the worst kind of disappointment, and when it happens, when this child inevitably fails, the fall will destroy you. Perhaps, Abubakar admitted, but for the first time in 5 years, I felt my toes move. Even if this is all that happens, even if I never walk again, it was worth it for that single moment. There you are, getting soft, Engineer Tunde scoffed. But there was discomfort in his voice. No, Abubakar corrected, looking at his legs with new perception. I am becoming human again. The words floated in the air like a silent accusation, because everyone in that room knew the truth. Alhaji Abubakar Sani had lost more than his legs in the accident. He had lost all capacity for genuine human connection, and now, a 10-year-old girl was beginning to give it back to him. The news spread through the Hope Springs Rehabilitation Center like wildfire. In less than 24 hours, every doctor, nurse, physiotherapist, and employee knew about the 10-year-old girl who had made Alhaji Abubakar Sani feel his feet for the first time in 5 years. And with the news came something Ngozi had not anticipated. Attention. A lot of attention. On the afternoon of the second day, when Adana was preparing for the 4 p.m. session, they found the third-floor corridor completely crowded. At least 30 people were clustered near Abubakar's suite. Some with genuine curiosity, others with hostile skepticism, and some with something more dangerous. Desperation. Please. A woman of approximately 40 years old grabbed Ngozi's arm with trembling fingers. My daughter has been in a wheelchair for 7 years, a spinal injury like Alhaji Sani's. If your daughter can help him, she can help my child too. My husband had a stroke. Another man pressed, his eyes red from recent crying. The doctors say he'll never regain movement on his left side, but if there's a chance, my father is on the 4th floor. A young woman in her 20s completely blocked the way. Paralysis from a motorcycle accident. He's only 52, his whole life ahead of him. Please, you have to, get out of the way. Chief Emeka Nweke's voice cut through the air like thunder. The businessman had appeared out of nowhere, using his large body to clear a path through the crowd. The child has an appointment. You can line up and wait your turn like civilized people. Line? The paralyzed girl's mother repeated in a broken voice. My daughter is suffering now. I can't wait in line while she... And you think your suffering is more important than anyone else's here? Chief Emeka retorted coldly. Everyone has sad stories. Everyone wants miracles. It doesn't make you special. Adana watched the scene with a heartbreaking expression. She could see the genuine pain on each face, could feel the desperation emanating from those people like physical heat, and she knew, with devastating certainty, that she couldn't help everyone. I'm so sorry, she said softly, her voice small, but reaching everyone in the corridor. I wish I could help each of you, but the sessions with Alhaji Sani leave me completely exhausted. I can't do more than 2 a day without what? The stroke victim's husband pressed. Without getting tired? My wife is dying inside, seeing the man she loves become a shadow. And you're worried about getting tired, Carlos? Baba. His wife put a hand on his arm. She's a child. She can't. She can perform miracles. Carlos exploded, all his frustration and pain transforming into misdirected rage. Alhaji Abubakar Sani is walking down this corridor, telling anyone who listens about his toes moving, and she's saying she's too tired to help other people. Alhaji Abubakar Sani is not walking. Dr. Chike Obi intervened, emerging from his suite with a severe expression. He had minor involuntary movement in his extremities. That is not the same as functional recovery, but it's more than zero, doctor. Kunle Adebayo was right behind him, holding his tablet, and zero is what all the doctors at this center offered for years. So perhaps you understand why desperate people are willing to believe in a child. The implicit accusation hung in the air like toxic smoke. Dr. Cheek flushed visibly. We are offering the best evidence-based treatment, he defended rigidly. We cannot promise miracles because miracles do not exist in medicine. And yet something is happening with Abubakar that your science cannot explain, Barrister Oladele Fayemi added, appearing from the elevator with engineer Tunde Alabi. The 4 businessmen now formed a protective barrier around Adana and Ngozi. Why are you here? Ngozi asked with genuine confusion. Why are you protecting us? Chief Emeka looked at her with a complicated expression. Because last night, each of us went home and couldn't sleep. We stayed awake thinking about what we saw, and we realized something disturbing. What? Adana asked softly. That we spent decades building fortunes by being cynical, not believing in anything we couldn't quantify in spreadsheets, Doctor. Kunle explained, his voice carrying the weight of confession. And then a 10-year-old girl appears and shows us that perhaps the world is bigger and more mysterious than our arrogance allowed us to believe. You still think I'm a fraud, Adana declared, not as an accusation, but as a simple observation. Yes, Engineer Tunde admitted honestly. Part of me still thinks that, but the other part saw Alhaji Abubakar Sani cry with joy for the first time in 5 years. And that has to mean something. The crowd in the corridor had grown to almost 50 people. Now patients in wheelchairs, family members carrying stories of loss, even some doctors from the center who came out of professional curiosity. We need to establish rules, Dr. Chaik announced loudly. The child will conduct her sessions with Alhaji Abubakar Sani as agreed. After that, if she has energy, she can evaluate other cases, but in order, with proper registration, and under constant medical supervision. Who decides the order? The paralyzed girl's mother asked desperately. I decide. Alhaji Abubakar Sani emerged at the door of his suite, still in his wheelchair, but with a visibly different posture. There was something in his eyes that hadn't existed 2 days ago. Authority mixed with purpose. This is my center. My money funds everything here. So I set the rules. The silence that followed was tense with expectation. The child will treat me until I walk, or until it's clear it's not possible. Abubakar continued. After that, if she wants to continue helping others, I will fund a complete clinic dedicated to her methods, with doctors, equipment, everything she needs. Surprised exclamations exploded through the crowd. Abubakar, you can't be serious, Dr. Chaik protested. A whole clinic based on something that is working when everything else failed. Abubakar cut in coldly. Chaik, for 5 years you told me to accept my condition, to make peace with never walking again, and I spent millions on treatments that led to nothing. He looked directly at Adana, and there was raw gratitude in his expression. This child gave me more progress in 1 session than you gave me in 5 years. So yes, I'm going to bet on her. I'm going to bet big. But what if it's placebo? One of the younger doctors challenged. What if Abubakar is simply so desperate for results that he's imagining movement where none exists? Then prove me wrong, Abubakar responded immediately. Put sensors, do MRIs, record in high-definition video, document every session scientifically. If it's placebo, science will prove it. If it's not, it will revolutionize everything we thought we knew about neurological recovery, Barrister Oladele completed in a low voice. Adana finally spoke, her voice small, but carrying an authority impossible for her age. I need to go in now. Alhaji Sani is starting to cool down. I can feel it from here. If we wait longer, I'll have to start from scratch. How can you feel that? Dr. Chaik asked with mixed fascination and skepticism. I don't know how to explain it, Adana admitted. It's like hearing music no one else hears, or seeing colors that have no name. My grandmother said some people are born with antennas tuned to different frequencies. She moved through the crowd towards Abubakar's suite. Then she stopped and turned. And for all of you who are waiting, I promise I will try to help. I cannot promise cures, I cannot promise miracles, but I promise that every person who comes to me will receive everything I can give. Even if it kills you from exhaustion? Carlos's wife asked softly. My grandmother worked until her last day of life, Adana replied with devastating simplicity. She said the gift doesn't belong to us, it's borrowed, and we have an obligation to use it while we can. The words resonated through the corridor with the weight of a sacred oath. Inside the suite, Abubakar was already positioned, shirtless, ready for the session. But something was different today. An elaborate setup of cameras, sensors connected to his legs, and 3 specialist doctors. Dr. Cheek had brought from other institutions. They're going to monitor everything, Abubakar explained when he saw Adana's expression. Neural activity, muscle contraction, skin temperature, blood flow. If something is really happening, science will capture it. And if science cannot measure what's happening, Adana asked softly, then science will have to expand its measurement methods. One of the specialists replied, Dr. Aisha Bello, a neurologist with 40 years of experience. Child, I came here skeptical, but I also came with an open mind. If you are doing something real, I want to understand, not to discredit. Adana nodded, approaching Abubakar, but before she began, she did something unexpected. She placed her hands on his, not on his legs, but on his hands. What are you doing? Abubakar asked with confusion. Feeling you, Adana responded simply. Before working on the body, I need to feel the person. I need to understand not only what is physically broken, but what is emotionally broken. She closed her eyes, her small hands enveloping Abubakar's, and when she spoke again, her voice had a strange quality. Older, wiser. You are angry, not with the wheelchair, not with the accident. You are angry with yourself. Abubakar visibly stiffened. I don't know what you're talking about. You are angry because the accident wasn't an accident, Adana continued, her eyes still closed. You were piloting the helicopter, not the regular pilot. You wanted to save money by not hiring a pilot for that day. And when you lost control, when you started to fall, your last thought before impact was, this is my fault. The silence in the room was absolute. Every person present was frozen, witnessing something that defied rational explanation. How do you know that? Abubakar whispered, tears already forming in his eyes. Because your body is holding that guilt. Adana opened her eyes, looking directly at him with a compassion that shouldn't exist in someone so young. It's holding it so deeply that it became part of the paralysis. You cannot walk because part of you believes you don't deserve to walk. That's absurd. Dr. Chaik began to protest. It's psychosomatic. Dr. Aisha interrupted, her voice laden with astonishment. There is extensive medical literature on how emotional trauma can exacerbate physical conditions. If Abubakar is carrying deep guilt about the accident, he may be unconsciously sabotaging his own recovery. Punishing himself through the paralysis, Barrister Oladele completed. Abubakar was openly crying now, his body trembling with sobs he had contained for 5 years. I killed the pilot, he confessed through tears. Dele had a wife and 3 children, and he's dead because I wanted to save 1.5 million naira by not hiring him for that day. Did you pay his family? Adana asked softly. I paid for everything, Abubakar responded. House liquidated, education for the 3 children up to university, lifelong pension for the widow. But money doesn't bring Dele back. Money doesn't erase what I did. No, Adana agreed. But carrying guilt forever doesn't honor him either. Dele would have wanted you to live, to walk, to be happy. You didn't know Dele. How can you know what he would have wanted? Because my grandmother taught me that good people always want others to be happy, even after they've gone. Adana replied with a simplicity that cut through all complexity. And by the way you speak of him, Dele was a good person. She began to work then, her hands moving over Abubakar's spine with surgical precision. But today was different. Today she spoke as she worked, her voice low but constant. Forgive yourself. With each breath, forgive a little more. Dele has already forgiven you. The universe has already forgiven you. Now you need to forgive yourself. The sensors on Abubakar's legs began to flicker wildly. The doctors watched their screens with expressions of increasing shock. Neural activity is spiking, one murmured. Pathways that were dormant are lighting up like fireworks. This is impossible, another whispered. Spinal cord injuries don't recover like this. Not spontaneously, not without extensive surgical intervention. Perhaps it's not spontaneous. Dr. Aisha said slowly. Perhaps she is activating something that was always there, but was blocked by psychological trauma. 20 minutes passed in reverent silence. Adana worked. Abubakar cried silently, and the doctors recorded data they knew would challenge everything they had learned in decades of practice. Then Adana retreated, visibly exhausted. "Try now," she whispered. "Try what?" Abubakar asked. "Move your leg, not just your toes, your whole leg." Abubakar looked at her as if she had asked him to fly. "Adana, I can't. It's 5 years of try," she insisted with gentle firmness. "And as you try, say aloud, 'I forgive myself.'" "This is ridiculous," Abubakar began, but then he stopped. Because what did he have to lose? Pride? Dignity? He had lost those long ago. "I forgive myself," he whispered, focusing all his attention on his right leg. Nothing happened. "Louder," Adana encouraged. "And believe." "I forgive myself," Abubakar shouted, tears streaming freely, and his leg moved. It wasn't small, it wasn't subtle, it was unequivocal, voluntary movement that lifted his knee at least 15 centimeters from the surface of the chair. The room exploded in chaos. Doctors shouted, checking equipment, questioning their own eyes. The businessmen were frozen in shock. Ngozi covered her mouth with both hands, sobbing, and Abubakar simply looked at his raised leg with the expression of someone witnessing the birth of the universe. "I moved my leg," he whispered with astonishment. "My God, I moved my leg." Adana smiled, but she was so pale she looked about to faint. Ngozi ran to support her before she fell. "Are you all right?" she asked with panic. "Just tired," Adana murmured. "That took everything I had." "Doctor," Aisha Bello approached, her hands trembling as she held her notes. "Child, what you just did will rewrite entire medical textbooks. I'm going to need to study you, understand your methods, document every—" "No," Adana interrupted her gently, but firmly. "You cannot study a gift, you can only witness it. But there has to be a scientific explanation," Dr. Aisha insisted. "There has to be mechanics behind what you do." "Perhaps," Adana conceded, "or perhaps some things just are, and spending too much time trying to explain them makes you lose the opportunity to experience them." Abubakar tried to move his leg again, and it responded. Not perfectly, not easily, but it responded. After 5 years of absolute silence, his body was finally speaking back. "How long until I walk?" he asked with desperate urgency. "Days," Adana responded. "Perhaps a week. Your body is remembering. It just needs practice now." And at that moment, observed by skeptical doctors and converted businessmen, a silent revolution began. A revolution that would prove that miracles did not violate science. They simply expanded it. The news exploded beyond the walls of the Hope Springs Rehabilitation Center when one of the younger doctors, unable to contain what he had witnessed, published a shaky video on his social media showing Alhaji Abubakar Sani moving his leg for the first time in 5 years. In 6 hours, the video had 3 million views. In 12 hours, journalism teams from 5 television channels camped at the entrance of the center. And in 24 hours, Adana and Ngozi's lives changed in ways they could never have foreseen. "We can't go out," Ngozi whispered to her daughter on the morning of the 3rd day, looking through the window of their new room on the 2nd floor. The center's gate was besieged by at least 200 people, reporters, cameras, and more terrifyingly, dozens of desperate people in wheelchairs, on crutches, carrying sick loved ones. They traveled from other states. Dr. Chaik entered without knocking. His expression was one of professional panic. There are people who drove 12 hours overnight. One family sold their car to pay for bus tickets, and all are demanding to see Adana. "They are not demands," Adana corrected gently from the bed where she still rested, visibly exhausted from the intense session the previous afternoon. "They are pleas that will crush you." Ngozi responded with protective ferocity. "You are a child, Adana. You cannot carry the weight of hundreds of people's hope." "My grandmother carried it," Adana replied with devastating simplicity. "For 60 years she carried it, and she died of exhaustion." "That's why," Ngozi retorted, tears already forming. "Your grandmother was 87 years old when she passed, but she looked 100. The gift consumed her from the inside out, and I refuse to see the same thing happen to you." Before Adana could respond, the door burst open violently. Alhaji Abubakar Sani entered, not in a wheelchair, but leaning on crutches, taking shaky but unequivocal steps. Behind him came the 4 businessmen, all with serious expressions. "You need to leave the country," Abubakar declared without preamble. The silence that followed was one of absolute shock. "What?" Ngozi finally managed to murmur. This is getting out of control quickly, Chief Emeka explained, showing his phone with dozens of news headlines. Miracle child heals millionaire. Child healer challenges medical science. Clinics want to ban her from practicing. Ban? Adana sat up in bed, finally showing real fear. You don't have a medical license. You don't have certifications. Technically, what you're doing can be considered illegal practice of medicine, Dr. Kunle explained with cold pragmatism. And there are very powerful people who want to ensure you stop before you cause more trouble. Trouble? Ngozi repeated with incredulity. She's helping people. She's threatening billions in established medical industries, Engineer Tunde corrected brutally. Think about it, Ngozi. If Adana can really cure paralysis with massages and techniques that anyone can learn, what happens to spinal surgeries that cost $500,000? To experimental stem cell treatments that cost fortunes? To expensive medical equipment? Are you saying they are going to hurt her? Ngozi whispered in horror. I'm saying they're going to destroy her reputation. Barrister Oladele responded. They've already started. There are articles being prepared calling Adana a charlatan. Doctors being interviewed saying Abubakar is having a psychosomatic recovery, that it has nothing to do with her, that any improvement is a temporary placebo. But they saw, Adana protested. The doctors were in the room. There were sensors, cameras, equipment, measuring everything, and all that data is being questioned. Dr. Cheek intervened, entering behind the group. His expression was of someone fighting a losing battle. I received calls from 3 different medical councils this morning, all concerned with unproven procedures being performed in a reputable facility. They are threatening to revoke the center's license. They said that if I continue allowing unregulated alternative treatments, they will shut this place down, Abubakar said, his voice laden with rage. Then let me go, Adana said immediately. I don't want to cause trouble for anyone. You're not causing trouble, Abubakar roared, banging one of his crutches on the floor. They are causing trouble because you make them look incompetent. He took 2 shaky steps towards Adana, his eyes shining with tears of rage. For 5 years I spent over 200 million naira on treatments that did nothing. And then a 10-year-old girl appears and makes me walk in 3 days. 3 days, Adana. And that terrifies them. Because if a man with infinite resources prefers a child without formal training to the best doctors in the country, what does that say about the entire system? Chief Emeka added somberly. It says the system is broken. A new voice resonated from the door. Everyone turned to find a woman of approximately 60 years old, elegantly dressed, with graying hair and eyes that carried sharp intelligence. Behind her were 3 private security guards. Who are you? Abubakar demanded. Dr. Gabriela Montes. She introduced herself with an accent that indicated years living abroad. Harvard-trained neurologist, 30 years researching spinal cord injury, recovery, and currently an independent researcher hired by a consortium of medical institutions to evaluate unusual situations. You came to discredit her, Ngozi accused, moving instinctively to block Adana. I came to understand, Gabriela corrected, walking calmly into the room, because unlike my colleagues who are terrified, I am fascinated. She approached Abubakar, examining his posture, the way he distributed weight on the crutches, the slight tremor of muscles that were rediscovering function. You had a lesion classified as Asia B, she declared. Incomplete sensory preservation, but no motor function below the level of the injury. Prognosis for ambulatory recovery, less than 5%. And yet, here you are, standing 3 days after meeting this child. Then do you believe? Adana asked with cautious hope. I believe something is happening that we don't fully understand, Gabriela responded carefully. And instead of discrediting what I don't understand, I prefer to study it. She turned to Adana, her eyes softening. Child, you have an extraordinary gift, but extraordinary gifts attract extraordinary attention, and not all attention is well-intentioned. She already knows that, Ngozi said defensively. But does she know the extent? Gabriela challenged. Does she know that there are pharmaceutical corporations valued in billions that see you as a direct threat? Private clinics that fear losing rich patients if alternative methods go mainstream? Doctors who spent decades building reputations that you are questioning in days? So, what do you suggest? Abubakar asked tensely. Rigorous scientific documentation, Gabriela responded immediately. Not flight, not hiding, but studying each session with protocols that not even the most determined skeptics can question. Transforming Adana's gift into validated science. How? Doctor? Chaik asked, clearly interested despite his previous skepticism. Establish a formal clinical study. Adana works with carefully selected patients, all with documented injuries, similar to Abu Bakar's. We monitor each session with state-of-the-art equipment. We publish results in respected medical journals, Gabriela detailed with military precision. And what if the results show that she cannot replicate what she did with Abubakar? Barrister Oladele asked pragmatically. Then at least we will know, Gabriela replied. But my suspicion, based on 3 decades of neurological research, is that we are going to discover that Adana is accessing something real, something that Western medicine simply doesn't understand yet. Adana watched the conversation with a thoughtful expression. Finally, she spoke in a soft but firm voice. There is one condition. Everyone looked at her. I want every person who comes to me to be treated with dignity. It doesn't matter if they are rich like Al-Haji Sani or poor like I was. It doesn't matter if they have health insurance or traveled by selling everything they owned. Everyone receives the same care. That's impossible to manage, Dr. Kunle objected. There are hundreds of people out there. Now thousands will come when the news spreads further. Then I will work with hundreds, with thousands. Adana responded with a determination that shouldn't exist in someone so young. Until I cannot anymore. Until my body gives up as my grandmothers gave up. No, Ngozi cried, grabbing her daughter. You are not going to kill yourself for strangers. I will not allow it. Mama. Adana held Ngozi's face with both small hands, forcing eye contact. If I don't use the gift, it has no purpose. And if my life has no purpose, then what is the point of being alive? The words struck Ngozi like a physical slap, because she recognized that logic. It was exactly what her own mother, Mama Amara, had said countless times. The gift was neither a curse nor a blessing. It was a responsibility. Your grandmother was 87 years old, Ngozi whispered through tears. You are 10, and perhaps that's why I can help more people, Adana replied with devastating simplicity. Because I have more time. Abubakar approached, balancing carefully on his crutches. Adana, I am going to make a promise. I am going to protect you with every resource I possess. I am going to hire the best lawyers, the best guards, the best doctors to monitor your health. And the moment I perceive that this is harming you more than it is helping others, I myself will stop everything. Deal? Adana studied his face for a long moment. And if I don't want to stop, then I will remind you that I am cruel, rich, and accustomed to getting what I want. Abubakar responded with a shadow of his old sarcasm. And what I want is for you to survive to help my daughter when she is born in 6 months. The silence that exploded in the room was of absolute shock. You have a daughter? Chief Emeka was the first to regain his voice. My ex-wife is pregnant, Abubakar admitted, his voice laden with complex emotion. We divorced 6 months after the accident. She couldn't deal with my cruelty, and I don't blame her. He looked at his legs, the crutches, the newly discovered possibility. But she called me last night. She saw the video online, and for the first time in years, she asked if I wanted to be present when our daughter is born. Tears streamed freely now. Adana, you not only gave me back my legs, you gave me back my family. You gave me the opportunity to be a father. And if my daughter someday needs what you can do, I need you to still be here. Healthy, strong, alive. The confession broke something in the room. Ngozi began to cry. The businessmen discreetly wiped their eyes. Even Dr. Gabriela seemed emotional. Then, let's do this properly, Gabriela declared, recovering her professional posture. We establish rigorous protocols. We limit Adana to 3 sessions per day maximum. Each session is scientifically documented, and she receives constant medical support to ensure she is not harming herself. And the hundreds of people waiting out there? Dr. Cheek asked. We triage. We select cases that have the highest probability of responding. We document everything, and we build scientific evidence that not even the most determined skeptics can ignore, Gabriela responded. But that's not fair, Adana protested. Why do some people deserve a chance and others don't? Because you are a person, not a god, Gabriela responded gently, but firmly. And even gods have limits. Adana looked at her mother, at Abubakar standing for the first time in 5 years, at the businessmen who had transformed from mockers into protectors, at the doctor who wanted to transform her gift into science. Okay, she finally agreed. We do it your way, but every person I cannot help. I want to teach other people to do what I do. My grandmother taught me. I can teach others. You want to create healers? Dr. Kunle asked with disbelief. I want to multiply the gift, Adana corrected. If 100 people learn what I know, we can help 1,000. If 1,000 people learn, we can help millions. That's revolutionary, Gabriela whispered. You're proposing to democratize healing knowledge that was passed down only through family lineages for generations. I'm proposing to do what is right, Adana said simply. Knowledge that can help people, but remains hidden, is not knowledge, it is selfishness. Abubakar began to laugh, not with cruelty, but with genuine joy. A 10-year-old girl just challenged millennia of medical tradition. This is incredible. This is dangerous, Gabriella corrected, but there was admiration in her voice. Adana, do you realize that you are proposing something that will make you even more threats, not less? Yes, Adana responded calmly. But my grandmother always said, what matters is not how long you live, but how many lives you touch while you are alive. Your grandmother was wise, Gabriella conceded, and probably knew she was preparing you for something much greater than herself. She turned to the group. So, here's the plan. We start slow. Adana works with Abubakar until he is walking independently. We document every step. Then we select 10 carefully chosen patients for a pilot study, and in the meantime, I start teaching, Adana completed. People interested in learning, not just techniques, but philosophy. Not just where to touch, but how to feel. There are risks, Engineer Tunde warned. People can learn badly, they can hurt others, they can use knowledge for scams. People already do all that with conventional medicine, Adana replicated. There are bad doctors, incompetent nurses, charlatans using fake diplomas, but that doesn't mean we stop teaching medicine. The logic was irrefutable. She's right, Barrister Oladele admitted. And honestly, if Adana can teach what she does, I want to learn. Even if I never use it to heal anyone, I want to understand. Me too, Chief Emeka added. I spent 50 years building buildings. Perhaps it's time to learn to build something that truly matters. One by one, every adult in the room agreed. And at that moment, in a hospital room full of powerful people, a silent revolution was officially launched. A revolution that would prove that healing was not the property of a privileged few. It was the right of all who dared to learn. But as they made plans and established protocols, none of them perceived the figure observing from the half-open door. A man in an expensive suit, holding a phone, recording every word. And when he walked away silently, his first words on the phone were laden with threat. We have a much bigger problem than we thought. The girl is not just healing. She's planning to create an army of healers. We need to act now. The war was just beginning. The call came 3 days later. At 2 a.m., Ngozi woke to her phone vibrating insistently, the name Dr. Cheek glowing on the screen with an urgency that chilled her blood. Come to the center now. It was all he said before hanging up. 10 minutes later, mother and daughter ran through the empty corridors towards Abubakar's suite. But when they arrived, they found something that paralyzed both of them at the door. Alhaji Abubakar Sani was standing, without crutches, without support, just standing in the center of the room, tears streaming freely down his face as he took one step. Then another, then one more. He was walking. I woke up an hour ago, Abubakar explained with a voice broken with emotion, and my body simply knew, as if the 5 years in a wheelchair were a nightmare from which I finally awoke. Dr. Jacobi was in the corner checking monitors with the expression of someone witnessing the impossible. All neurological functions are normal, not just improved, normal. As if the injury never existed. But it existed. Dr. Gabriela Montes intervened, entering with a team of neurologists who had worked with her in recent days. I have the MRIs from 5 years ago. The injury was real, severe, devastating. And now, she showed the most recent MRI on the screen. The spinal cord is completely regenerated. Not scarred, not compensated, regenerated. This defies everything we know about neurology. Abubakar took 3 more steps, testing each movement as if rediscovering a forgotten language. Then he turned to Adana, who watched with a small but radiant smile. How? He asked simply. You forgave yourself, Adana replied with devastating simplicity. And when you did, your body finally had permission to heal completely. So, it was psychological from the start? Chief Emeka asked, as he and the other 3 businessmen had arrived minutes after Ngozi and Adana. No, Dr. Gabriela corrected firmly. The physical injury was real, but Adana unlocked something that Western medicine still doesn't fully understand. The body's capacity for self-repair when emotional and energetic barriers are removed. And now they are going to try to discredit this. A new, cold voice resonated from the door. Everyone turned to find a man in an expensive suit, the same one who had been seen spying days before. Behind him were 4 private security guards. Who are you? Abubakar demanded, his voice recovering all its ancient authority. Dr. Jaid Olawale, legal representative of the National Consortium of Medical Institutions. The man introduced himself with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "And I have come to notify you that all activities related to unregulated alternative treatments performed by Adana Okoro must cease immediately." "By what authority?" Dr. Kunle challenged. "By the authority of 3 legal processes being prepared as we speak," Jeed responded calmly. "Illegal practice of medicine, placing patients at risk, and my favorite, exploitation of minors for financial gain." "Adana never charged a kobo," Ngozi exploded. "No, but Alhaji Abubakar Sani publicly promised 5 million naira," Jide replicated, "and that constitutes compensation for unlicensed medical services." "I haven't even accepted the money yet," Adana said softly. Yet, Jide smiled like a predator. "The promise is enough for legal proceedings. And when we are done, Adana Okoro will be banned from touching any patient. Ngozi Okoro will be investigated for child negligence, and this center will lose all its licenses." The silence that followed was charged with palpable threat. "Except," Jide continued, "if you accept our proposal." "What proposal?" Abubakar asked in a dangerously low voice. Adana stops immediately. She signs a document declaring that any improvement in patients was coincidence or placebo, and in return, all legal processes disappear. You receive generous financial compensation, and the girl can live her life normally. "Normally?" Adana repeated the word as if it were poison. "You want me to lie about the gift my grandmother taught me? To pretend that Alhaji Sani is still in a wheelchair when he is clearly walking?" "Oh," Jide said coldly. "You continue, and we guarantee you will be publicly destroyed. We will find patients who will say, 'You harmed them,' doctors who will testify against you, evidence that will prove you are a charlatan." "False evidence," Dr. Gabriela accused. "True enough for courts," Jide smiled. "Adana, you are 10 years old. You don't have the resources to fight a legal battle that can last years. You don't have an established reputation to protect. One child against corporations valued in billions. How do you think this ends?" Adana looked at her mother, seeing terror in Ngozi's eyes. She looked at Abubakar, who clenched his fists with impotent rage. She looked at the businessmen, at the doctors, at everyone who had witnessed the miracle. And then she did something no one expected. She smiled. "You're right about one thing," Adana said calmly. "I am just a 10-year-old girl. I have no money. I have no power. I have no resources to fight against giant corporations." She took a step towards Jide, her presence small, but somehow filling the entire room. "But you know what I have? Truth. And truth filmed, documented, scientifically validated. 3 days of recorded sessions showing Alhaji Abubakar Sani going from paralyzed to walking, dozens of doctors witnessing, neurological data that cannot be falsified. That we will discredit," Jide responded, but there was nervousness in his voice. "Now you can try," Adana agreed. "But while you do, I will release all the videos publicly. I will teach my techniques for free online to anyone who wants to learn. I will democratize knowledge that you want to keep hidden." "Is that a threat?" Jide asked. "It's a promise," Abubakar intervened, taking 3 firm steps to stand beside Adana. "And I have the resources to ensure that every second of footage reaches every news channel, social media platform, and medical journal on the planet." "Me too," Chief Emeka added, positioning himself on the other side of the girl. "And I," Dr. Kunle joined. "And I," Engineer Tunde agreed. "And I," Barrister Oladele completed. The 4 richest businessmen in the state now formed a protective barrier around Adana, their combined fortunes creating a wall that not even the medical consortium could ignore. "You are committing professional suicide," Jide warned. "No," Abubakar corrected. "We are choosing the right side of history, and when this story is told, you will be the villains who tried to suppress healing because it threatened profits." Furthermore, Dr. Gabriela added with a cold smile, "I have already sent copies of all the data to 5 international medical journals with a detailed article on neurological recovery that challenges current paradigms. It will be published regardless of what you do." Jide looked around the room, perceiving that he had lost. His expression transformed from confident to something close to panic. "This is not over," he threatened, backing towards the door. "You're right," Adana agreed. "It's just beginning, because I will not stop. I will teach 100 people. Those 100 will teach 1,000, and those 1,000 will teach millions. And there is no legal process that can stop an idea whose time has come." Jide left without another word, his guards rushing behind him. The silence that remained was one of victory, but also of sober understanding about what was to come. "They will be back," Dr. Chaik murmured, "with more lawyers, more threats, more resources. Let them come," Abubakar responded. "We will be ready. But first," he turned to Adana, I need to pay my debt. I said I don't want the money, Adana protested. I'm not offering money, Abubakar smiled. I'm offering something better. He grabbed his phone and made a quick call. You can bring her now. 2 minutes later, a woman entered, approximately 8 months pregnant, beautiful despite eyes swollen from recent crying. Adana, this is Amina, my ex-wife. Abubakar presented with a soft voice. Amina, this is the child who gave me back my life. Amina looked at Abubakar walking, at the man she had left because his rage and pain were unbearable, and began to cry. Are you really? Can you really? She couldn't finish the sentence. Walk? Yes. Be the man you deserve me to be. I'm trying, Abubakar responded, approaching her. I cannot erase 5 years of cruelty. I cannot recover the time we lost. But I can offer a different future. He placed his hand gently on Amina's belly. Our daughter will have a father who can carry her, who can run with her, who can teach her that even when we fall, we can get up again. Amina crumbled into his arms, sobbing against his chest, and Abubakar held her. He truly held her, standing, strong, present in ways he hadn't been able to be for years. So, my payment, Abubakar said to Adana through his own tears, is that you be our daughter's godmother, that you be present in her life, that she grows up knowing that miracles are real, because you are real. Adana began to cry too, and Ngozi pulled her into a tight hug as both processed the magnitude of what they had witnessed. I have something for you too, Chief Emeka announced, awkwardly wiping his own eyes. My construction company will build the clinic we promised, but not just a clinic. A complete learning center where you can teach, where healers can train, where Western and traditional medicine meet. I'll fund the medical equipment, Dr. Kunle added, the best money can buy. I'll cover operational costs for the first 5 years, Engineer Tunde offered. And I'll establish an educational fund to train the next generation of healers, Barrister Oladele completed. You all. Ngozi couldn't finish, emotion blocking her voice. We were cruel, Chief Emeka said simply. We mocked you and your daughter when you were most vulnerable. This is our redemption. It doesn't erase what we did, but perhaps it balances the scales a little. Dr. Gabriela approached Adana, kneeling to be at the child's eye level. I will document everything you do. I will translate your gift into scientific language that Western medicine can understand. And I will spend the rest of my career proving that you were right, and we were limited. And I, Dr. Chaikobi added, his voice broken by emotion, I will apologize to you, to your mother, to every employee of this center whom I treated as invisible. Adana, you didn't just heal Abubakar. You healed all of us from the blindness that made us see only titles and money instead of humanity. Adana looked around the room, at the man who was walking, at the family reuniting, at the businessmen transformed, at the doctors humbled, but inspired. My grandmother used to say that the greatest miracle is not healing the body, she said softly. It is healing the heart, making cruel people remember compassion, making rich people remember humanity, making everyone remember that we are connected. She grabbed her mother's hand. And Mama, you sacrificed everything for me, your career, your life, your identity. So, my request is, go back to teaching, not just biology in school, but neuroscience in the center we are going to build. Teach doctors about the science behind what I do. Ngozi looked at her daughter with admiration and love so intense it hurt. You look like your grandmother right now. Good, Adana smiled. Because she taught me that legacy is not about what we keep. It is 3 weeks passed in a whirlwind of activity. Alhaji Abubakar Sani gave his first public interview, walking onto the stage unassisted, telling his story to a national audience of 15 million. The video went viral globally, reaching 120 million views in 48 hours. The legal action from the medical consortium was silently withdrawn when public pressure became unbearable. Dr. Jeed Olawale resigned from his position, and 3 members of the consortium's board of directors were forced to step down when internal emails revealed they had planned to fabricate evidence against Adana. The construction of the Mama Amara Nwakana Center began on the land Chief Emeka donated, 50,000 square meters, dedicated to uniting traditional healing with modern medicine. The design was revolutionary: spaces for individual sessions, classrooms for teaching, laboratories for scientific research, and gardens of medicinal plants that Adana herself helped plan. And most importantly, Adana began to teach. Her first class had 12 students, 3 doctors who wanted to expand their knowledge, 2 physiotherapists seeking new methods, a nurse who had seen too many hopeless patients, 2 of the 4 businessmen who had learned humility, and 4 ordinary people who simply wanted to help others. I cannot teach the gift, she explained in the first class, her voice small but firm, filling the impromptu auditorium. Because the gift is not taught, it is discovered. It is in all of you waiting to be awakened. For 6 hours a day, she demonstrated techniques. Not just where to touch, but how to feel. Not just physical pressure, but emotional connection. Not just science, but art. And people learned. Not all with the same level of success, not all with the same natural intuition, but all with the same passion to help. Ngozi, fulfilling her promise to her daughter, took over as educational director of the center under construction. Her first contribution was an applied neuroscience program that connected traditional healing methods with modern scientific fundamentals. Skeptical doctors who came to discredit ended up staying to learn. Dr. Gabriela Montes moved permanently to the center, dedicating her career to documenting and validating every aspect of Adana's work. Her articles began to appear in the world's most prestigious medical journals, challenging decades of established dogma. Chief Emeka, Dr. Kunle, Engineer Tunde, and Barrister Oladele, the 4 businessmen who had started as cruel mockers, became the biggest advocates and funders of the movement. Each found ways to use their resources and influence to expand the center's reach. But above all this, there was one date everyone awaited with anticipation mixed with nervousness: the birth of Abubakar's daughter. 1 month after the day it all began, the center's garden hall hosted a special celebration. Alhaji Abubakar Sani, walking perfectly now, without even thinking about each step, held his newborn daughter, little Amara Amina Abubakar, named in homage to his ex-wife and Adana's grandmother. She will grow up in a different world, Abubakar said, looking at the baby in his arms. A world where healing is not the exclusive property of the rich, where knowledge is shared, where miracles are possible because brave people refuse to accept limitations. Adana, now an official godmother, gently touched the baby's small hand. And you will see that even when things seem impossible, even when everyone says to give up, there is always hope. Because of you, Amina said, tears of gratitude streaming freely. No, Adana corrected gently, because of all of us. Because healing is never the work of one person. It's what happens when a community decides to believe. Ngozi watched her daughter, seeing traces of Mama Amara in every gesture, every word, every moment of compassion. Her mother had departed, but the legacy lived on, not only in Adana, but in every person she touched. Your grandmother would be so proud, she whispered. She knows, Adana responded with absolute certainty. She always knew this would happen. That's why she taught me everything. That's why she prepared me, not to hoard knowledge, but to scatter it like seeds to the wind. On the other side of the room, the 4 businessmen watched with expressions that would not have been possible weeks ago. Genuine humility, deep gratitude, and something akin to admiration. We changed, Oladele, Chief Emeka said quietly. We improved, Dr. Kunle corrected. We became human again, Engineer Tunde completed. Thanks to a 10-year-old girl who refused to be humiliated in silence, Barrister Oladele added. Dr. Cheek and Dr. Gabriela were in the corner reviewing data that in weeks would be published in the world's most prestigious medical journals. Data that would prove that complete neurological recovery was possible, that holistic healing had a real scientific basis, that modern medicine had much to learn from ancient traditions. This is going to change everything, Gabriela murmured. It already changed, Dr. Cheek responded, looking at Adana. We just haven't fully perceived the extent yet. In the weeks that followed, stories began to emerge from Adana's first 12 students. Maria, one of the doctors, used the techniques with a patient suffering from chronic pain for years. The patient reported 70% improvement after only 3 sessions. The medical community was divided, some celebrating, others seeking explanations that fit existing paradigms. Carlos, one of the physiotherapists, combined Adana's methods with conventional therapy and began to see results he had never achieved before. Patients who had plateaued in their recovery suddenly made significant progress, and more powerfully than anything, ordinary people without formal medical training discovered they could help their loved ones in ways that previously seemed impossible. A mother helped her child with debilitating migraines. A husband helped his wife regain mobility after a stroke. A grandfather taught his granddaughter that hands that care can also heal. The movement spread like ripples in calm water. 100 people became 1,000. 1,000 became 10,000, and each carried with them not only techniques, but a philosophy. That healing is a fundamental human right, not a commercial privilege. The medical corporations that had tried to suppress Adana now faced an impossible choice: adapt or become irrelevant. Many chose to adapt, incorporating holistic methods into their practices, hiring trained healers to work alongside conventional doctors. The revolution was not violent, it was gentle, persistent, unstoppable. 6 months after that afternoon in the courtyard, when it all began, Adana stood before an audience of over 1,000 people at the official inauguration of the Mama Amara Nwakana Center. The building was magnificent, not for opulence, but for purpose. Every space had been designed with healing in mind. Natural light flowed through large windows, internal gardens with medicinal plants, rooms where ancient methods and modern technology met in perfect harmony. But the most beautiful thing was not the architecture. It was the people. In the front row was Abubakar, holding little Amara Amina, now 6 months old, smiling with the innocence of someone who would grow up in a more compassionate world than her parents had known. Beside him was Amina, who now worked as a patient coordinator at the center, ensuring that every person, rich or poor, received the same level of care and dignity. The 4 businessmen occupied the second row, each having found a deeper purpose than the accumulation of wealth. Chief Emeka now directed a foundation that built healing centers in low-income communities. Dr. Kunle had transformed 3 of his private hospitals into hybrid models, offering both conventional and alternative medicine. Engineer Tunde funded scientific research on traditional healing methods, and Barrister Oladele had sold half of his properties to create a perpetual fund that guaranteed the center would never depend on a single source of funding. Ngozi was on stage beside her daughter, no longer the invisible cleaning employee, but a respected educator whose applied neuroscience program was being adopted by universities on 3 continents, and distributed throughout the auditorium were hundreds of people whose lives had been touched by Adana, directly or indirectly. Patients who had recovered mobility, hope, dignity. Students who had discovered gifts they never knew they possessed. Families who had learned that the power to heal lived within them. Adana looked over that crowd, seeing faces of all ages, backgrounds, education levels, and in each, she saw potential, not just to be healed, but to heal. My grandmother used to say, Adana began, her voice amplified by microphones, but still maintaining its gentle quality, that true treasure is not kept in strongboxes, it multiplies in hearts. She paused, letting the words settle upon the audience like a blessing. 6 months ago, I was just a poor girl who had nothing except the knowledge my grandmother had taught me, and there was a rich man who had everything, except the ability to walk. Our encounter could have been just another story of humiliation and pain, but something miraculous happened. Not just physical healing, but healing of something deeper. The healing of the pride that separates us, the healing of the arrogance that makes us forget our shared humanity, the healing of systems that value profits more than people. Abubakar stood up, beginning to clap. One by one, the entire audience rose, the ovation growing like a wave, until the entire auditorium resonated with the sound of 1,000 hands, joining in celebration. Adana waited for the applause to subside. Tears streamed down her cheeks, but her voice remained firm. This center bears my grandmother's name, Mama Amara Nwakana, but it is dedicated to every person who ever felt their suffering was invisible, to every healer who was called a charlatan for doing what doctors could not, to every family that was forced to choose between bankruptcy or pain. And it is dedicated to the possibility that we can create a world where healing is a right, not a privilege, where knowledge is shared, not hoarded, where the greatest power comes not from how much we can take, but from how much we can give. She turned towards her mother, taking her hand. My mother taught me about sacrifice. She showed me that true love means putting the needs of others before your own. She showed me that dignity is not measured by title or salary, but by how we treat those who cannot give us anything back. Ngozi sobbed openly now, squeezing her daughter's hand with a strength that spoke of years of struggle, pain, and unwavering love. Adana looked at Abubakar, who held his daughter with a reverence he had never shown for any material possession. And Alhaji Sani taught me that redemption is possible, that even the most lost people can find their way back, that admitting error requires more courage than maintaining pride, that true strength is not in never falling, but in getting up every time we fall. Abubakar inclined his head, silent tears streaming as he pressed his daughter closer. So today, Adana continued, her voice rising with conviction that filled every corner of the auditorium, we are not just opening a center, we are declaring a truth that the world needs to hear, that miracles do not violate the laws of nature. They simply remind us how vast those laws truly are, that the greatest treasure is not hoarded, it is shared, that real power does not come from money, it comes from compassion, and that a single person, no matter how small, no matter how poor, no matter how underestimated, can change the world. Her voice softened, becoming almost a whisper that somehow every person in the room could hear perfectly. When they have courage enough to believe, and love enough to share. The silence that followed was sacred. Then, starting with Abubakar and expanding through the entire audience, people stood up, not applauding this time, but with hands over hearts, recognizing that they had witnessed something that transcended words. Adana looked over that multitude, over changed lives, restored hopes, rewritten futures, and knew that her grandmother's legacy had not only survived, it had flourished in ways that not even Mama Amara could have imagined. As the sun set through the center's windows, painting everything in golden hues, Adana held her mother's hand and looked towards the future with eyes that held no fear. Because she knew something her grandmother had taught her, something she now taught others, that the true miracle is not healing the body, it is healing the world. One person at a time, one heart at a time, one act of compassion at a time. And that miracle, once begun, never truly ends. It only multiplies forever. See,